if there is responsible discussion, responsible reporting, responsible journalists out there who are setting out the facts, giving honest views, and we can then have a proper discussion. I think a large part of the disquiet about online media is that there's a lot of propagation of falsehoods, which distort debates, which distract the debate. And I think a large part of that, a large part of what we're seeing is really the focus on that.
When it comes to this idea of online voices, online journalism, Bertha, let me come to you, please. I know you used to run the Breakfast Network and decided to shut it down. Could you have not gone through with the registration?
I couldn't register because I couldn't, at that point in time, comply with it. I mean, we weren't properly set up to be able to fill in all the forms, which were quite onerous, despite what it says. And secondly, basically, I've had to get some of my people on board to sign it. And I think the nature of the internet, which the government has to try and wrap its own minds around, is that it's not filled with just one sort of people. There are people who might be ideologically opposed to any kind of regulation, for people who just want their freedoms, or within certain limits, or, you know, there are all sorts of people. So it was a bit difficult for me to try and bring my whole staffing on board with this regulation.
My name is Shreni and I'm a student from SMU. So my question with regard to online regulation is, are the limits as of now with regard to regulation too onerous? And second, if they are, will the government look to narrow the scope of this sort of regulation, especially as we note that the Broadcasting Act might be debated in the upcoming year?
Who would you like to answer this?
I will direct these questions to Bertha and MP Hari Kumar.
Okay. Well, basically, I think the regulations or the rules have been framed so broadly, you practically don't know if you've fallen into it in some black hole, and the regulations can be drafted and enacted at any time. So, for example, the one on registration for a site like mine or The Independent, this is a fairly new thing. I mean, yes, it is in the Broadcasting Act. Yes, it is part of the class licensing, not activated, so to speak. You know, so, and ditto for the online sites, the licensing rules on the 50,000 unique visitors. You can't have us live with this idea that everything is so broad and that, you know, it's basically up to someone somewhere who suddenly decides that you must come under this. You know, I would advocate a lot more transparency so that we can all operate under some rules, yes, but clear rules. And
give us an example of what you've referred.
Well, basically, the online site registration is already, online site licensing program is really quite broad. You know, why are some sites on, why are some sites not on? In terms of registration of websites like mine, here I have a vested interest. I mean, I would ask why me?
Mr.
Okay.
Hari Kumar, let's bring you in on this. Your response to our young man's question as well.
I think it's important to look at this. It's an evolving process. This is a very new medium for not just Singapore, but around the world. And I think governments around the world are trying to wrap their head around this. We are not the only ones. And as the Broadcasting Act comes amended, we will have more debates on this. I'm sure the rules will evolve. But right now, what is important is that we want transparency on the online sphere as well. So if you are prepared to give an opinion or assert a position, put your name down. Don't be anonymous. Don't hide behind this cloak of anonymity. Online registration forms, are they onerous? I'm sure we can make them simpler. There's been many regulations that have been made simplified over time. I'm sure these can be made simpler, but don't forget that the Independent had no difficulty registering. So it's not so onerous that no one can register.
I'd like to respond to that. I think the Independent was notified in July. That's something I think people seem to have forgotten. So I think they were quite well prepared psychologically that they would have to sign something at a certain time. I think the other thing to note is that their setup is rather different from mine. They do have 6 shareholders. There are people who are already financially vested. I, of course, cannot say why they sign, but I can see the difficulty if they don't sign in terms of unraveling what they've already put in place.
But I'm going to have to move on very quickly, but your quick response.
But Bertha's problem is not that she didn't have time. I mean, she wanted extensions. I'm sure she can ask extension. I think she did ask for an extension and got one. Her difficulties was that she didn't, many of her people didn't want to sign on to it. Maybe they want to keep anonymous, I don't know. But time was not a problem. There are other problems. So if she wants an extension,
I need to defend myself on that. I need to defend myself on that.
I've got 20 seconds.
Okay, first of all, my people are all byline. We don't go under some cover, some names. They're all there. We do say who we are. Secondly, I asked for 1 month. I was given 1 week. So essentially, I don't think in 1 week, and I'm going away very soon, I'll be able to turn people around.
We're going to have to move on. There are lots happening in the online world. Your comments as well. Let's open it up to the floor. Who's our next question?
Yeah, hi. My name is Victor. Okay, look at all the different things that happen in the social media, a lot of different events that happened in Singapore, and a lot of comments has been going on in the social media, and this has actually affected a lot of different people.
Yes, your
and
question?
it actually affects the social construct. And I would like to know, like, how's it going to be like in the future for Singapore in terms of how is it going to affect our social construct, our racial, harmony between each other?
In fact, I'm quite worried that Singapore is found to have the second highest cyberbullying cases in the world after the United States. It says something about the nature of the kind of interaction that we see online, and it has real-life consequences on individual people. In other countries, we see people committing suicide because of cyberbullying, and we don't want that to be the norm in Singapore. So I think it's important for us to maintain a certain high level of engagement in terms of civilized norms, and to move towards an environment where if you see a group which is lynching an individual in a personal way, we should not join in. We should step up and should speak against such behavior. And this we have to start with all individual netizens today, and not wait until some nasty incident happens where a person feels they have to take their own lives.
Something else that happened on the internet sphere that was very big, Ashley Madison, the website, the Canadian dating website promotes extramarital affairs, was banned in Singapore. In a Facebook post, Mr. Harikuma, you attacked the Workers' Party, claiming that your party was not clear on its stand on Ashley Madison. He said, and I quote, "Why not make its position clear? Because the WP knows that either position it takes would put it at odds with one group of Singaporeans or another. So the safest thing to do is to sound like you are saying something without actually saying anything." What's your response to that, Gerald?
Well, firstly, I want to state that I find this website an affront to the values that many Singaporeans hold dear. It's an affront to our value, the sanctity of marriage, and I think that we support actually the move by the government to block this site. However, going beyond that, I think blocking the site alone is not the solution to the problem of adultery in our society. I think the solution lies with parents, with teachers, with religious leaders, speaking to their children, speaking to their congregations, to try and imbue the values that we hold dear, and to try and bring our country to that level. And it's not for the government to micromanage every aspect of it. And they can block one site, but there may be many other sites that will pop up. And so I think it's important to build that social resilience to this kind of issues.
Okay, I'll take some questions, but your response?
Yeah, so I'm glad Gerald's made the position clear, but there's a larger issue because I think Ashley Madison's easy because it's an obnoxious website, and yeah, we should have blocked it. But it's a larger issue because will the Workers' Party therefore accept that the government should have the right to block any websites it finds objectionable? Because ultimately, someone has to make a decision, and the government has to make a decision as to which website it allows and which website it doesn't. So does the Workers' Party accept that the government should be given such a power?
Does it?
I think that's exactly the thing. It's not about blocking websites. I think blocking websites is really the politically easy way of doing things. There are many other issues that we have to deal with, and if you're just going to take the approach of blocking websites and you think that that's a solution to the problem, then it's not. I'm sorry.
Alvin,
Of course it's not.
I must say that I don't think that there's a problem blocking a website as a symbolic move of the government. It's just like the way 100 porn sites are on some banned list. I mean, there are thousands or millions of porn sites that it doesn't ban. So in a sense, the government saying that I'm coming out to ban this is just a signal. And I appreciate that signal, really.
Alvin?
But I agree with where Gerald is coming from, because the education is also important. So it might be necessary but insufficient.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course. Of
So,
course. Insufficient, yes,
yeah,
of course.
so what are the other things? Yeah, what are the other things? Like a comprehensive sex education, or being accepted in the curriculum, things like that you can discuss and not sweep everything under the carpet. I think it's more the attitude, like all these things, like even the recent riots. Right? Is it alcohol only there are other maybe deeper issues that might be there. So I think what Gerald is saying, which I agree, is to actually go into a thick description of the situation. Social, cultural issues. We always look into the GDP economics, yeah? And I think that's important. It's become important to Singapore as well because of how we've come such a long way, because looking at GDP and economics factors. But these are seem to be the only reason that we harp on to affect policies and everything else. We are not looking at social, cultural education. We're not looking at how do we move from multiculturalism to interculturalism.
Okay.
So that we can then look at social integration, right? We are looking at the economic factors because we feel that the Singaporeans see that that's important, that it's a good life that we need. But the good life, it also has social, cultural factors involved.
Let's pick up on this in just a bit, but let's open the floor. Last question for this segment. Who would have a question?
Hi, this question is directed to MP Ng. May I clarify? You spoke about cyberbullying, but isn't that a social problem? Most of the MDA legislation that has been released is actually aimed at more political commentary websites. How can we best create a culture of kindness and respect in Singapore, especially on online platforms, and best capitalize on this from both sides of the political spectrum, not just from the government? Thank you.
No, I agree totally with you that every citizen, in fact, should take ownership of this problem. And where the government steps in is where it has rules against harassment in real life. So should we have similar rules online? In many other countries, they are looking at this issue very seriously, and some countries have moved already on cyberbullying and have passed laws on cyberbullying. And we are studying to see whether we need to have such a law as well, because we do see an incidents online, and people are really affected by it. And we don't want our young, especially, to believe that this is a way of interacting normally. It is not. Harassing, calling people names, vitriolic engagement, this is not the norm that we want to see in Singapore.
But the laws haven't been passed yet?
No, it's not. No, it's still looking at it.
So you were quick to pass the MDA legislation, but the laws regarding the more serious problem of cyberbullying haven't been approved yet.
I think we have to be very clear on what we're talking about. There are various issues, like many of us have pointed out. The internet world is a very new phenomenon, and we're all learning to grapple with it, not only in Singapore, but many parts of the world. In fact, even the US and UK are grappling with it. And there are different issues. One is cyberbullying, there's trolling, there's online media. Online media is a very specific area to do with whether we want to bring it to be in line with mainstream media. That's a totally different area, and many countries are also examining it. Cyberbullying, trolling, using the cloak of anonymity to attack others, to engage in vitriolic behavior, violent behavior, purveying lies, fabrications. This is another area that we need to look into, and both are important areas. So where we moved fast on, and where is an area where perhaps the MDA has something to fall back on, which is the mainstream media, the rules that already govern mainstream media.
We're going to have to leave it there for now. Unfortunately, we've got a whole year to cover in this program. We have to go to a commercial break, but stay tuned. When we return from the haze to the dengue epidemic, we check out some of the major challenges Singaporeans had to face in 2013. Stay with us.
The question I have for perhaps the panel is that how true was the Singapore conversation in reflection of the citizens' view, especially when the 12 perspective and the 5 shared values has never mentioned anything about our concerns regarding equal rights for the LGBT community?
Welcome back to Look Back 2013. This year also brought many challenges to Singapore. Was there a specific event in which we, the government, society, didn't quite seem prepared to handle? I'm going to go to the floor and see what questions we have. Who's our first question standing by? Hi, go ahead.
How do we build healthy social empathy? I guess a particular hard challenge that Singapore faced was the haze. Well, it was a very common experience for the people over there in Rio, for example. Yet this experience that we faced for the first time was so hard for us to grapple with. But why did we respond this way?
Okay, and social empathy. I'm going to take back-to-back questions. Somebody had a question here as well.
I think my question is, I'm William, by the way. My question is similar to hers. Just that we confronted cannot obviously be solved just by the government alone. My question to all of you, especially politicians, is how can you help us to build a social compact that can bring people together to solve the problems?
The need to build a social compact where everyone feels that it is something that they can they can identify. That's very important. So we always say that we want a society which is more gracious, which is more decent, which is more fair, more equal. But how fair, how equal, how just, how gracious, how decent? And the answer comes not from just what we say, but also from how we respond collectively as a society to events like rental flats in our estate, elder care centres in our estate,